Okay, welcome everyone. Thanks for registering and participating in the survey for the Farms of the Future Breakfast webinar series. It would have been fantastic to have this on farm as we had originally planned. However, as we know, due to the current restrictions, that wasn't going to be possible at the scale we wanted to do. So we're actually going fully digital with the project and with our presentation. So yeah, hopefully everyone's patient with us. I'd really like to thank firstly our farming collaborators, Brian and Donna, Rob and Susanna, and James and Edwina Crossing. It's been a pretty busy, yeah, over 12 months for all of us, but it's come to a really good culmination, and we've got a really good setup, and hopefully you'll enjoy sharing that over the next 3 mornings. Also, I'd like to thank our suppliers. It's been a lot of work for them. Some things were pretty standard and a lot of things were new. The project team, which has been pretty broad across the New South Wales government. Our DPI comms and event team, Joe and Ellie and a few others for helping me pull all this together. Thanks for that help. And also some of our partners for getting the message out through the LLS and New South Wales farmers and a few others. I'd just like to hand over to Joe before I run through the agenda, so she can just give a bit of housekeeping around the webinar intro.
Yeah, sure. Can everyone hear me? I don't remember if I muted myself or not. Yeah, so just a couple of things. I would expect most people on this session are probably familiar with Zoom and have been in Zoom sessions before, particularly these days. So as Scott mentioned, there's video coming. So yeah, if you can leave your cameras off for that, that'll just help with the bandwidth issue there. And then we've got, as each speaker presents, there'll be, yeah, we want to encourage you to ask questions. So there's a couple of ways we're going to have you do that today. So when the presenters are actually talking, if you've got questions that you want that come up during those talks, if you could submit those via the chat, that would be great. And then when we have a Q&A session at the end, we'll be keen to hear, you know, give you the opportunity to actually ask verbally if trusting that time then still permits. So, but if you know, you can either still submit questions via the chat, but if you'd like to actually just ask a question verbally, then you can use the raise hand function, which you can see we've got highlighted there. Yeah, so if you could, and then if you could all just please stay muted, yeah, during the course of the session while everyone's talking, that would be great. But yeah, if there's any questions about anything at all, then please, if you can't hear anyone or anything, please just raise your hand or pop a question in the chat, and we'll keep an eye on that.
Great, thanks, Joe. Do you want to just jump back to that agenda? Thank you. Thanks, everyone. So this is the first in 3 events every Tuesday morning, so nice early starts for everyone. So I'm going to kick off with an introduction into digital ag and the project, followed by Reese, who's working for the Snowy Hydro Legacy Fund team, just to position where the regional digital connectivity project fits in with Farms of the Future. Then we're going to hand over to Matt Notley from Tocal, who's going to give some background around AgTech skills and learning, some of his experience and some of the programs which are coming up very soon. Then we start to jump into more of the technical side of the things with Alan Venter, who's going to give an overview of the DPI digital ag projects. This is just one of a few DPI projects we're working on, so we'd really like to give you a background in that. Then we'll work on the technology and connectivity based around this project with Anthony Clark. We'll talk a bit about the technology connectivity, just to position some of those, or some interesting information came through on the survey. So I appreciate everyone contributing to that. Then we're going to get into the practical side of things and hear from Darren Price from Price Rural Consulting, who is involved with the MLA Karwula project, installing a whole heap of technology on a property down south there. And he's going to talk about his experience with working with the technology and a couple of good examples on return on investment to help position that. And then as we close out, we're going to ask Tim Gentle from Think Digital. Tim's been working with me for the last few months on a few e-resources for the project. Originally, we were going to have an augmented reality app on a phone for the farm walks, which obviously isn't happening. So we've ported a lot of that onto the web. So he's going to give an introduction to that, and I'll be sharing the details on that later today. So you'll be able to access that virtual farm tours. There's video content, information around the different technology we've installed. So you can have a look at that for the next event when we actually involve the 3 collaborators and get them on the screen. So thanks, Joe. If you want to jump onto that first slide, that'd be great.
I think so. Yep, we're all good now.
Farm to the Future program is a pilot program where we're going to trial some new technology to give data, real-time data to farmers so they can make the right decision in a timely manner. This is part of the New South Wales Government's commitment, $400 million digital connectivity program underpinned by the $4.2 billion Snowy Hydro Fund. This is about making sure primary industry agriculture continues to be the backbone of regional economies.
Hi, my name is Brian Ditchfield. I run a mixed farming enterprise with sheep, cattle and a little bit of fodder cropping southeast of Coonamble towards the Warrumbungle Mountains. Some of the technologies we've put on through the program include tank level sensors, trough level sensors, bore level sensors, also cattle tracking, cattle weighing in paddock, video surveillance, Wi-Fi across the property, rain gauges, soil moisture monitors. Yeah, this is a porosity moisture probe. It measures how much moisture is in the soil down to a depth of 1.8 metres. So there's not a lot to look at here, but it's doing its job, and it's more a long-term thing, getting the data from it. So we'll see how it goes as it dries out. We're getting a lot of data into the dashboard, and in the future, hopefully, we'll be able to look at records on what, not only what rainfall we've had, which is what everyone's kept previously, but we're going to look at temperature, we can look at predominant wind directions for if we want to spraying at certain times, and what the soil moisture is doing. So over long term, we'll be able to look what it sort of builds up, what we can extrapolate from that data. Some of the benefits I've seen from the technology include not having to travel to the other property, which is 50 kilometres away, to check water as often, which is a big cost saving. Being able to see how much rain we've had at various locations on each property. Being able to see in real time, day to day, how much weight cattle are putting on. This side panel is adjustable for the side if you've got smaller cattle using it, so that you don't get 2 going in at once. That has changed on the newer design, I did notice the other day. He's got a panel in either side. But yeah, this is basically it. They just walk on there, step on there with the front 2 feet while they're licking at the whatever lick block you put in there, and you get the weight. Somehow it works out the weight. I'd be happy to recommend to farmers to look at some of this stuff and invest in some of this connectivity to help you manage your places better and see what's going on.
So we are Rob and Susanna Tuck Ag is our company. We farm 10 farms in the Macquarie Valley in a 40k radius. We grow a mixed cropping broadacre irrigation setup with livestock enterprise as well. So we're very mixed, very diversified. So the Farms of the Future program has been pretty important for us. We spend a lot of time checking things, checking pumps, tanks, monitors on weather stations, rain gauges, whatever else. So for us, the connectivity is highly important. The Wi-Fi connectivity has been fantastic for our program. But the main benefit has been travel, as in we commute between 10 farms, monitoring all different sorts of applications. So the time saving has been huge for us. Time saving, fuel saving, vehicle saving, safety saving. Just not putting guys on roads in the middle of the night to check remote pump stations. This particular pump station here is based on one of our cotton farms. It's a pretty integral part of the farm. It monitors and pumps all the water that runs our tail water return system. So we want to capture all our irrigation water we don't use, it runs off. We don't want to waste any into the environment, or it could have fertiliser, could have anything. So we want to capture all that water. It's very important. So this pump station here, brand new, hasn't got a shed on it just yet, but it's in the pipeline. It's monitored through the connectivity program, and we're sensing these pumps to make sure that they're still running when we start them, they don't shut down, and to see what this water level is doing behind us. So we know if this water level fills up too full, we need to rev the pumps up or down so we can keep that water away, keep it within a closed system into that reservoir there, so it can be ready for reuse. Overhead irrigation, we've converted a lot of our flood irrigation to overhead irrigation, pressurised systems. We're seeing a consistent 30% water saving, and the other advantage is gives us connectivity with our irrigation operation. So where we were using just good old manual flood furrow with siphons, we've gone to machines, which gives us electricity, which gives us monitors, a lot more connectivity. We can connect telemetry, whatever. So these machines can talk to us as they're irrigating. They can give us replies if they stop or something goes wrong. And we can also log all the data they put on, so it gives us a lot better records at the end of the season on how much water we've applied and things like that. So pretty efficient, great machine. 30% water savings has been a huge advantage to us in our industry. Monitoring is very important. These machines don't pull up when you go to bed, and when you knock off, they keep going, so they're going 24/7. So we need to be able to monitor them, seeing what they're doing, and be able to do it from your kitchen table while you're having a bit of quality time with your wife and family.
This is about actually empowering our farmers with the data, real-time data, so that they can actually measure their resources, measure their business in a way they've never done before, and make those decisions in a timely manner. And if we do that, we know that we'll get better business outcomes.
So Farm of the Future program, connectivity program's been a highlight over the last 12 months. We've come away a lot smarter, we've come away a lot better in what we do, and we're making more informed decisions.
My name's James Crossing. We're here at Angalong Vineyard. Angalong is our family property that we run a wine grape vineyard and also a cattle grazing operation. We've been involved in the Farms of the Future pilot project for a bit over 12 months now. I think the biggest labour saving is with our checking water infrastructure. So at a glance we can check the tank levels and the trough levels without actually having to go out in the field and check them. Obviously river flow is critical for us, particularly in these dry times when the river flow may be a bit low to keep up with the pumps. As you can see, it's a 4k drive to get down to the river, so it's quite an ordeal to get down there. Yeah, it's very steep, so you've got to do it in a full drive. And if we're getting some wet weather, then that's a bit difficult too, because it's not really a all-weather road. Big advantage of the connectivity is we have Wi-Fi coverage now all the way to the river. So we have a river pump to fill our irrigation dams from. So obviously being able to do that remotely is a big labour saving and just a big time saving, and also the peace of mind and knowing that all this expensive infrastructure is running properly. Over our Wi-Fi network we've got cameras, so through those cameras we can monitor the river level. We've got a camera at the cattle yards, so we can monitor the water troughs that are close to the yard. I've learned a fair bit about technology in this pilot program. It's been a pretty steep learning curve. So we've sort of been involved from selecting the technology right through the installation process and then using it. Another benefit we're seeing with the technology is also peace of mind, knowing that stock have got adequate water. If you can put that to rest in your mind, then we've got plenty of time to be concentrating on other things, other more important things.
Over the last few years, as the Minister responsible in working with the federal government on their mobile black spot program, what we saw was the big telcos were getting a lot of the funding, and rightly so. They were building the big infrastructure and sort of filling the gaps across the board, but not predominantly at a localised level, more at a network level. And we saw that, and we've seen hundreds of millions of dollars from the federal government invested, something like 60 or 70 million from the state. But what we have in that time found that there are a lot of other players in the market, small technology companies, especially around Wi-Fi, that are able to deliver solutions at a local level. That's why a couple of years ago I said to the agency, happy always to look at the big telcos, but I want to find those small players that can actually make a difference on the ground, and that's what we're seeing today.
Yeah, most farmers these days rely on on their mobile phone and their internet coverage. So having this Wi-Fi network across the property is proving valuable for us. So I would recommend that to other people if you've got any issues with your connectivity. This technology will definitely help.
So that was just a bit of an overview of the project. We'll get to see all of those pilot sites in a lot more detail next week, where we'll have an in-depth video on each one of those properties and have an opportunity to ask some of the participants questions about their experience. If we jump on to the next slide, please, Joe. Thanks. So the digitisation of agriculture has been happening for a while. I've been involved in following this since the 80s. I actually did my university thesis at UNE on personal computers as a farm management tool in the late 80s. At that point in time, basically my recommendation was don't worry about it, it's too expensive, there's no software, no one knows how to use it. But since that time, the world has obviously changed a lot. What was in those days when I did that research work, a personal computer was about $3,500, which in today's money is probably about $8,000 or $9,000, whereas now you can duck down to Harvey Norman and buy one for $700. So the technology, cost, capability has changed a lot. There's a lot more software and systems available. Obviously, we progressed through the internet, through into GPS, which is a great boost once that got really active on farm, and then really started to get active in digitisation when mobile connectivity became a lot more prevalent. We're still looking at issues around connectivity, which is part of the focus on this project. And then I really started to get excited about getting digitisation into the paddock when I saw the iPad come out. I could just see that that was a device which was more suitable to work in the paddock, work in cabins, in machinery, in utes, and we're seeing that adoption come along a lot more. Obviously, the next step in digitisation is really that full farm connectivity, which is what we're here to talk about today. And what does that deliver us? If we can go to the next slide. Thanks, Joe. So what that gives us, getting that connectivity into the paddock, away from the house, really gives us the ability to have a lot more sensors. There'll be a lot of talk over the next few events around sensors and different types of sensors. Automated machinery, which we're seeing come a lot more commercialized now. One of the things you hear a lot about is big data, so actually getting all of that information into the cloud, into systems, which allows that real-time modeling and systems, and also then gets onto machine learning. But that's all enabled by this term called IoT. I did a presentation to a group of agronomists a few years ago and Googled what's the next great thing in technology, and it was IoT, and I'd never heard of it. So basically, the Internet of Things is just having everything connected at all the time, which we'll be covering a lot with some of the sensors that we have available. Just as a quick overview of our pilot sites, we had a quick introduction there to our site at Coonamble, Narromine, and at Blaney. We have a mix of enterprises, a mix of geographies, a mix of different farming conditions. We've got a list there on the right-hand side of the different types of sensors that we installed, which we'll be going into more detail, especially in next week's event. But we had on those properties 12 suppliers from a short list of about 23 suppliers, 80 different devices with over 150 in total across 13 farms. We used all of those different types of connectivity, and most properties have something of each one of those in different parts of their operations. And we integrated that all back into one single platform because we're really focused on the connectivity and the devices. So we wanted all that information for all different tank level sensors from all the different weather stations in the one dashboard. Thanks to everyone that filled out the survey. Really interested. We have a really engaged group here. Obviously looking at that now, when are people planning to invest in AgTech? over 50% of our participants here are doing that now. So this is really relevant. So hopefully you'll be able to learn a lot. Not sure we keep jumping forward, Joe. And then the remainder are pretty much in the next 1 to 2 years. So that's just a bit of background on the actual pilot project. I'd like to hand over now to Rhys Puri from the Snowy Hydro Legacy Fund, Department of Regional New South Wales, who's going to give us an overview of how that fits into the bigger program, which John Barilaro was overviewing in the video previously. So thanks, Joe. If we could get Rhys on, that'd be great. Rhys, thank you.
Thanks, Scott, and good morning, everyone. So I guess in terms of Snowy Hydro Legacy Fund's involvement in this Farms of the Future pilots program has largely been as a funding body, and I also wanted to just take the opportunity today to run you through Snowy Hydro Legacy Fund and give an overview of the Regional Digital Connectivity Program, just so you could understand how this fits in with the New South Wales Government's wider activities in the space. So if we could jump across the next slide, please. So at a high level, the Snowy Hydro Legacy Fund was set up from the sale of the Snowy Hydro scheme, or New South Wales' share of the Snowy Hydro scheme, to the Commonwealth in 2018. And that $4.2 billion was dedicated to investment in transformative infrastructure that delivers significant economic and social benefits across New South Wales. So to achieve that, the fund has been split up into 5 different streams. One is water security, so looking at things like pipelines and dams. The second is digital connectivity, which I'll go into a little bit more on the next slide. The next one is activation precincts, which you might have seen a couple of those announced recently, for example, Wagga and Parks. And then the next one is freight linkages, and the last is rail and road passenger connectivity. So there's those 5 key streams of the Snowy Hydro Legacy Fund. And if we jump to the next slide. And then obviously the one that's most relevant today is the Regional Digital Connectivity Program, and that's what the funding for the Farms of the Future pilots has come out of. So it's a $400 million program, and it's been set up really with the aim to address the digital divide between metropolitan areas and New South Wales. And it does this by investing in digital infrastructure. And there's 3 streams of the Regional Digital Connectivity Program. So there's mobile coverage, which is looking to invest and eliminate black spots by investing in mobile phone infrastructure, and also looking at what the emerging technologies are that can future-proof that mobile coverage. There's internet and data, which has recently been renamed Gig State, and looking to bring metro level internet speeds into regional New South Wales, again by directly investing in network infrastructure, which includes data hubs in regional areas. And the last one, and probably most importantly for everyone on this call, is the Farms of the Future program. And the idea of that is really to enable farmers and agribusiness to use AgTech in order to increase productivity and resource management and resource use efficiency. So yeah, I guess that's a quick overview of the Regional Digital Connectivity Program. Happy to answer any questions that you may have, and just like to say thanks to Scott, all the farming collaborators and the DPI for all the hard work that they've done putting together today in the Farms of the Future.
Thanks, Rhys. That's great. Joe, have we got any questions come through in the chat at this point? One of the key things building off Rhys's presentation is the work we're doing in this project is feeding back into the New South Wales Government. That information from our experience running these pilot farms, plus the information that you provided in the survey, will go back into determining some of those priorities and hopefully taking this forward in the future. We might just keep moving forward. Joe, if that's okay, we'll go to the next one. I'd like to introduce Matt Notley, if we could switch over to Matt. Matt's a precision ag coordinator at Tocal College. I met Matt a couple of years ago at one of his precision ag courses and found it really hands-on, practical, very farmer focused. So Matt's going to give us an overview from his experience and from what Tocal are doing at the moment around AgTech skills and learning.
Yeah, thanks for that, Scott. So probably just a quick overview. I suppose a few people would know Tocal. Seeing a few familiar names pop up in the webinar today. Tocal's, the main college is located in the Lower Hunter, and we have a youth training program. So we train about roughly about 100 students that reside at the college each year, and we also have a traineeship program, which has about sort of 20 to 30 students who come in for block release and work somewhere out in the industry. That could be from dairy to cropping and anywhere in between. So just a few sort of things that we'd like to expose those students to make sure they're sort of getting some hands-on skills as they head out to the industry. And by doing that, we have a commercial farm at the college. So some of the technologies we've been, I suppose, adopting here and making sure our students are aware of when they graduate are things like the GPS and auto steer, so just some of the basics. We lead that into things like variable rate applications and applications with controllers. So we have a variable rate spreader, we've got a boom spray with section control, etc., like sort of technologies like that, just so they've got that sort of underpinning knowledge. And then we branch that out once we hit sort of into our Cert 4 students. We start to look at different types of data we can collect as an enterprise. So we've got we've done a bit of ECA mapping over the years. We have a few growers that allow us to use their farm data as well. So things like yield data, remote sensing, soil test data, and things like that. And students sort of get familiar using software programs with laptops and iPads, etc. How they can sort of integrate that, manipulate it, turn it back into a variable rate file or something of that nature to make it work in the tractor. We've also recently set up a LoRa network, and on that we've got a few different technologies, but probably the main ones for us are a soil moisture probe network under our centre pivots that the students sort of see and understand. Then we look at some irrigation scheduling with them based on them. We have a few weather stations, a couple of GPS trackers, and probably a really good one for us is electric fence network sensors, because we've got about 7 electric fence units across our different enterprises. So it's always handy to know when they go down. And they've all actually been integrated into the one platform. That's just another sort of example. We can show the students, you've got multiple sensors coming into one platform. So that's just through that pear tree platform. And a more recent one we've set up with students is a drone demonstration. So we've actually got a trial that we've planned out, and they'll be part of the application. And we've got a crop plot set up to sow and spray with drones. And we've got on one half, and the tractor is sowing and spraying on the other half. We're just sort of comparing the results of, just evaluating a new technology such as that. So that's a bit of a background what we do with our youth students. Go to the next slide. We've got just an example of sort of, I guess, where Tocal fits into the broader industry. Some of you may be familiar with the Ag Skill program that ran over the last 3 years. So it was a fully funded training program for the cotton and grains industry. So one of the main courses I was involved with was a course called Precision Agronomy. We trained about 350 growers across the state, farmers and agronomists. So that course was run over two-day workshops where we went out to the regional locations, sort of tried to be sort of pick central areas that growers could make to, and we'd cover off the concepts of things like spatialized, standardized data, how you can make machine applications work, so creating variable rate files, concepts of GPS technology. We spent a fair bit of time on yield data. That's sort of pretty big for those two industries. So just the collection and accuracy and use of yield data. and a bit about soil mapping, soil sampling, and also touched on remote sensing. So it was a really good course. It was an overview, an introduction, covered off a lot of the key concepts, just to get people rolling. It was pretty well received, and yeah, we were pretty happy with that. If I jump to the next slide, thanks, Joe. Probably our big news at Tocal, which we're excited about, is so AgSkill, the first round of AgSkill, which finished in June, has now been, we've had AgSkill, what they're calling AgSkill 2.0 released, or just AgSkill 2 for the rest of us. And Tocal's hoping to come out and do some more training. So we've already had some interest to run some more precision ag courses. We've got some more in the pipeline. We've got a course called AgTech Ready. We've got a course coming together on remote sensing, and we've got some courses just about to be rolled out on drones, and they're sort of looking at them using drones to collect data, and again, a bit like what we're doing with the students, actually do product applications with drones. So be a little bit more around probably liquids than granular type products in the short term, but that's sort of what we're evaluating at the moment. And we've actually, I thought I threw this one on there, it's probably not really digital, but we've released a product called ITA, or Introduction to Agronomy. That was just something we found out probably. We developed this course on the back of precision agronomy, probably to not only, I suppose, it highlights that we need to have digital skills, but it's an opportunity to upgrade people's knowledge, skills in agronomy. If they've, you know, they could be working out in the industry and maybe not had a great deal of exposure to some formal training in that aspect. So we found that to be a bit of an area to work on. So we thought that was pretty sort of pivotal and underpinning to making sure you get the AgTech right, is to understand the basics in agronomy. So there are a few courses we'll be running. So AgSkill 2, I said, yeah, been announced. So we've got another $15 million of funding to deliver over the next 3 years. So that'll be exciting. Hopefully you'll see us out and about across New South Wales, and yeah, we'll hopefully do some more training. So just got another slide, one last slide, I think. Yeah, another aspect Tocal's heavily involved with is helping to run the Extension Oz network. So it's a network that brings together what they call a community of practice, which is an area where you can have a group of researchers, growers, people like me. We collect information up, that gets turned into a short article, usually 300 to 500 words. We like to keep them short and snappy, with a link onto where you can find out more information. So we usually go and find someone, interview them, do up an article, and click on. So there's plenty of community of practice networks under the Extension Oz banner. Precision Ag is one of them, obviously most relevant for us, but there's, you know, there's things like automated milking. There's an automated milking one, irrigation biosecurity, crop nutrition, crop diseases, and the Young Farmers Business Network. So you probably might have heard of some of them. They're worth following. It's a nice, easy channel for getting the latest information and having a read of those articles. I think I might have one more slide, I think, actually now. One I always like to throw up. Successful training always needs collaboration. So as Tocal, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. We always like to go out and yeah, work with industry, work with who's out there, and make sure we're getting that right message across to the growers and make sure it's all working for everyone. So that's sort of us in an overview. We're always happy to, and that's not our full extent of people that support us. There's, you know, other grower groups and GPS companies and tractor companies that definitely help us along the way to make it all smoothly roll out. Probably appreciate it's an expensive training program to try and run. So yeah, we always need all the help we can get. So that's sort of Tocal in a nutshell. Happy to answer any questions if anyone has any.
There's a question that's come in from Stuart Smith about what kind of certification is provided with the courses and if they're digitally badged or able to be used for further training.
Yeah, absolutely. So at Tocal as a college, we're a registered training organisation, so everything's delivered against national units of competency. And one thing we were involved with, which is due to be released in the next, it's out there, it's just waiting to go live on the website. There's a new skill set which we've been pushing in digital agronomy. So there is, yeah, there absolutely everything we train in is backed against something nationally recognised, in which participants get a certificate and can build that up to a whole qualification. So as an example, you know, in the Precision Ag short course that we did, or Precision Agronomy, some people that were able, under the Ag Skill banner, they came and got a fully funded course. You know, that involved doing our short course 5 units of competency, of which 4 of them could be used towards a diploma. And we had about out of that, about 12 people actually come along and complete their diploma. So yeah, keeps leading on if they want to do more training, and it's definitely recognised.
Thanks, Matt. That's great. For people that want to keep in the loop on AgTech training, I know it's a pretty quickly evolving field, and Ag Skill 2 is coming along. Should they just contact you at those details below, or the Precision Ag at Tocal email address?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, just my mobile's there, or email, the Precision Ag email address there. I'll either be able to answer the question, or be able to pass you on to the person who will be able to get you lined up. So I think someone was at, the question is probably about training remotely. That's absolutely, that's a bigger part of what we do, go out and train remotely. So yeah, if you've got sort of, I guess, a group of people and a location, we'll come to you. Something I didn't mention there with Ag Skill 2, which is probably worth mentioning for, I suppose, some of the growers here in the room, is it's not just going to be limited to cottons and grains. This time round, we've got cotton, grains, production horticulture, viticulture and rice. So anyone in those industries will be able to access this funding, which is very exciting. It's sort of opened up a lot more growers into accessing that training. So if you're interested, get in touch.
Excellent. Thanks, Matt. Appreciate you coming along today and giving everyone that overview. Hopefully helps them know where to go now. Thanks, Joe. If we could jump on to the next one, I'd like to introduce Alan Benter. So Alan Benter is a tech specialist in digital ag with the DPI in the climate branch. So works alongside of me on a very different sort of program. Alan's going to give an overview of some of the other digital ag and ag tech projects which the DPI is working on at the moment, just to give you an idea of the breadth of area that we're covering across the group. So Alan, I'd hand over to you.
Thanks very much, Scott. Good morning, everyone. So the department, DPI has been using digital technologies and digital tools in their research for a long time. But it's really since 2016 that we've had a program where we've specifically looked at digital ag in commercial farms. If we could jump onto the next slide, please. So we've had 3 projects running over that time. As I said, going back to 2016, and Farm Decision Tech was really a very early project in that space, and really our first foray into digital technologies. And so we were looking at how we could bring technology out of the lab. And this scale on the right, the technology readiness level, just sort of gives us a scale between really where an idea begins and where we get to a fully commercial product. So that first project that we were looking at was really very early on in that space. Since then, that project has moved into another pilot project around climate smart pilots, which is much more about taking that sort of lab and field prototypes and really demonstrating them across full system integrations. And then that today's project around the regional digital connectivity, which is really looking at fully commercial systems. And so this slide, just to give you an overview of just where each of the projects that DPI has run so far actually sits and where they're sort of targeted. If we could jump onto the next slide, please. So Farm Decision Tech as a project was really focused on the livestock industry, and we had sort of 3 key objectives across 5 major themes that we were looking at. One of the first ones that we thought, well, this is not a traditional research project, and so we really went out and looked for collaboration with key technology partners. And so we brought in a commercial farmer, Bralka.com, who run a merino stud and does digital image acquisition. And through that program as well, also connected up with leading technology companies like Cisco, and DPI was actually one of the founding partners in Innovation Central Sydney, which was looking at AgTech in that sort of innovation and startup space that's so common today. But this is one of the first ones really focused on AgTech and involved DPI, Cisco, CSIRO and New South Wales farmers. One of the major themes that we looked at there was around sensors and connectivity. And at the time when we began this project, there was really not many options when it came to connectivity. And Cisco brought in, or was one of the leading proponents at that time of LoRaWAN, which really promised long range, low power, and easy to deploy sensor networks. But up until that point, it had really been focused on urban environments, and so trying it out in a rural and on-farm situation was that sort of next step for us to again sort of reduce risk for adoption of technology, to demonstrate how these technologies could be applied in an agricultural setting. Long range, low power, easy to deploy. We got 2 of those in the trials we've had. We regularly get transmission distances of up to 90 kilometres with our LoRaWAN networks. The devices can definitely be low power, pardon me, but the third one around easy to deploy, I think we're still really looking at that, how we can deliver on that one. And when we started this though, there was very little off-the-shelf, sort of commercial off-the-shelf products that we could buy. So we were really going through iterations of sensor development, including doing our own electronics development in-house. And we've, since that time, since sort of 2016, 17, we've still got devices today that are running out in the field from that very first sort of initial build. The next step there around reducing risk was bringing these technologies into an on-farm environment with livestock and under real commercial conditions. A lot of the partners that we introduced through the Farm Decision Tech program came out of mining and other high-tech industries, but they'd never been exposed to the problems and the settings on an agricultural and livestock enterprise. And so just simply bringing out their technologies and giving them a place to play where they could have, horses pull sensors out of the grounds and sheep eating cables and so on, really exposed them to a whole new set of problems and really sort of kicked on that, the development of their products. And the third objective there was around showcasing. So we were running a number of field days across the different sites we had in Orange and Molong, and also at the larger, like the Australian National Field Days and so on. Next slide, please. So a really key part of the Farm Decision Tech program was around that collaboration. And we wanted to continue that. So that's really rolled forward into this next program around climate smart pilots, and certainly is a big part of Scott's program with the Regional Digital Connectivity Project. With climate smart pilots, we've changed the focus of the technology a little bit now. So we're really looking at how we can use technology to make better decisions around climate variability, climate change, and how farmers can use that to adapt to those changing conditions. This is funded through New South Wales Climate Change Fund. What this really looks like for out in the field for us, we've got one of our pilots is down in Bateman's Bay on the Clyde River, and it's focused on oyster growers. And they're using a community-owned LoRaWAN network, which provides free data transmission for those farmers. We've put a weather station out there, so they actually have a weather station right where they're growing, and they can see exactly what's happening rather than at the bomb site that's 20-odd kilometres away. And that allows the farmers to better respond to high rainfall events because as the fresh water enters the production zone, that affects their ability to harvest and so We've also given farmers temperature sensors, so really simple technology that is off the shelf today. But these temperature sensors allow them to just track for heat waves and so on. So for oyster growers, when they're trying to manage pests and overcatch and bycatch, they lift the oysters out of the water and actually let the sun and the warm air kill off all those pathogens and that might attach themselves to the oyster shells. And if they get a sudden heat wave, a sudden warm wind coming in from the west or the north, they can lose all of that stock that's sitting out in the open. And certainly farmers down on the Clyde River have at times lost in single events over $100,000 worth of stock. So these simple temperature loggers give them that ability to be warned of temperature changes and that increasing sort of temperature load, so that they can go out and put them back into the water and look after their stock. Obviously, as already been mentioned in some of the videos, water management is a really big aspect of the pilots. One of our key partners sent to us an email early this year with this quote here, that being able to go away over Christmas and check in on his water for his stock just meant that he was actually able to enjoy his breakaway and actually enjoy that downtime. And that sort of co-benefit has been one of the more surprising aspects coming out, that, it just gives people a chance to get away from, make it easy to monitor what's actually going on their project. We've got pilots under this Climate Smart pilots through horticulture, livestock, fisheries, and irrigated cropping out at Trangie. If we can jump onto the next slide, please. So this gives you a sense of where the breadth is of those pilots, from right up at Coffs Harbour, where we're working with a team looking at blueberries, down through the Central West for water and irrigation out at Trangie, and horticulture and livestock around Orange, and down on the Clyde River, where we've got that oyster network that I mentioned, and then heading further west out towards Denton, where we're working with the DPI research teams in citrus to look at, again, water efficiency for citrus growing. We also have a really good, strong collaboration now with Charles Sturt University and at Bathurst, where their computer science students for their final year projects, many of them come in and base their project on one of our case studies, and it introduces these computer science students into the agriculture and gives them a good exposure to that. We've seen a number of students from that program get jobs within the AgTech community, and they really do some fantastic stuff, including one that's just completed a LoRaWAN pump automation system that gives him irrigation control. Next slide, please. So this is a broader reach than the Climate Smart Pilots program. Matt has already mentioned that they've got a LoRaWAN network up on the Tokau College site, and that same network is being rolled out across many of the DPI research stations. So this provides not only a solid research tool for our research stations and the staff that are there, but it also is a public network. So anybody that happens to be around those spaces can use that same network. What I think you'll see in the future is that this is going to start operating more as a showcase for technology on those sites in those particular sectors, but also give a bit of a sandpit for future work. And I think over time, you'll start to see results and also data coming off those sites in real time and being made available. Next slide, please. Basically, that's a quick run through of the DPI projects. So if you've got any questions around the Climate Smart pilots or the digital AgTech work, please get in touch with me. Or if you want some more info around our climate change research strategy that covers a much broader picture than digital ag, then please get in touch with Rachel Young. Thanks, Scott.
Thanks, Alan. It's great to see that breadth of projects especially getting into the fisheries side of things. And oysters, I was part of the Port Stephens LoRaWAN rollout, and just some of the challenges there. They had the research station there around water quality and managing their fish breeding. It's very different focus on agriculture, really. We've got a question, Alan, from Brian Thompson. Is the New South Wales DPI looking to commercially develop some sensors and telemetry products? Also, just interested to clarify your comments that there was little off-the-shelf connectivity products in 2016 you could integrate with when there were probably 10 to 20 suppliers and manufacturers of radio and cellular telemetry already operating in the market. Double questions there, so we'll tackle the first one first. Alan?
So the first one, probably at the moment, some of the things that we've been developing, we've now been looking more in those areas where there is no commercial product available for it. I think right at the present, all the work that we're doing, particularly software, we're making it available as open source. And a lot of the tools that we might develop, we're looking to release at this point in time. We think it's much better to get those tools out there and to get people building them and getting them accessible rather than pushing them back through a much longer commercialization pathway. It'd be better to just get it out there and get people using these things. Well, Brian, I think back in 2016, there may well have been 10 or 20 suppliers, but I'm not sure just where they were. We certainly looked around. We did have a number of suppliers, I think, that we were working with at that time, but perhaps more just in the livestock space and in the very limited area that we were looking at around livestock sensor development. There was a lot of manufacturers, but whether they were fitting in with our LoRaWAN network that our partners were using, perhaps that's where there was that divergence.
Great. Thanks, Alan. Appreciate your time, and hopefully that's given everyone a good overview of the breadth of some of the work that's happening across the DPI. If we could jump to the next slide. Thanks, Joe, and bring up Anthony Clark. Anthony, if you want to turn your video on, we can get you live. Anthony Clark is the leader of the Climate Application and Digital Agriculture Group. And Anthony is going to give an overview of some of this technology we've been talking about from a connectivity perspective. You've heard the word LoRa and LoRaWAN a couple of times. So I really want to position that with all the different types of other connectivity you heard in the video, so that going forward, especially once we get into next week's events with the on-farm collaborators, will hopefully give you a better understanding of how it all fits together. So if we could bring up Anthony, please, Joe, if he's there.
Yeah, I'm here, Scott. Thank you. Like many of you, I've spent a lot of time out in the field, running around with a lunchbox full of USB drives, trying to rip data off various devices in various research projects. And after a lot of sweat, tears and frustration and lost data and inconvenience, I've often thought there's got to be a better way to do this. Might get you to jump to the next slide, Joe. So I'm really glad to say, after nearly sort of 25 years of that running around, there are now there's a suite of emerging and some a little bit more mature technologies that do create that type of connectivity from the paddock to the farmers or to our office and up into the cloud. As Scott said, thank you to everyone who participated in the pre-workshop survey. And what we've done here is ask you to just rank your own knowledge around some of those different types of tech connectivity solutions. And it's fair to say from the results, we've color-coded them here. There's certain technologies like NB-IoT and Cat M1 where the dominant response was, yeah, we've got extremely poor and below average knowledge. right through to things that are probably a little bit more familiar to you, like Wi-Fi or long-range Wi-Fi, and in particular 3 and 4G, which is what most people are using now to connect their personal device when they're roaming around. So it's fair to say in this group, and indeed, more broadly, there's just differing levels of awareness around the different types of connectivity solutions that have been trialled in these pilots. So I might jump into the next slide. So really what my talk today about is just giving you a bit of background around the different properties and problems and challenges that we have with the various connectivity solutions. The first way to look at them is to think about, how far, or the range, if you like, that they can transport packets of data, the little digital packets that your mobile phone receives and sends, and also to look at how big those packets of information can be. And this, ranges from fairly short range type solutions, where you're getting sort of meters of connectivity, like things like your RFID tags that transport really small packets of data off cattle into a sensor onto your weighbridge, right up to really long range type technologies, which give you, arguably 10, 15 kilometers, like LoRa or LPWAN. LoRa, for example, has actually been tested in a low orbit satellite, and can give up to 200, 300, 400 kilometers of coverage in optimal conditions. Generally speaking, out on farm, we're talking about 10, 15 maybe, but we'll get more into some results around that. You can see that things like the 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G networks have medium to high bandwidth, really operate in that medium range. Products like Zigbee, again, occupy that medium range. Your Wi-Fi, which everyone loves, we can stream, movies and have really high bandwidth, really rich packets of data, really work over a short distance. Same with things like Bluetooth. We're starting now to see in that sort of medium bandwidth, long range, various satellite-based solutions, arrive in the market. The advent of what we call breadbasket satellites, small telecommunication satellites, are starting to become much more common. So what, I might just get you to flick through some of the pictures here, Joe. If you just keep flicking through, here's some sort of actual pictures of those different types of technology deployed in agriculture. And like I said before, what we now have is a real smorgasbord of options that you can adapt to your particular needs. Obviously, if you're trying to run, a heavy data intensive machine like your tractor and you're wanting to get remote connectivity, it's quite a different story to a small weather station, for example. So, and indeed, some physical attributes of your farm and your landscape make a huge difference and help you actually govern and choose what type of connectivity solutions right for your use needs. Might just jump on to the next slide, Joe. Oop, go back. Yeah, back one. Oh, forward one. There we go. Yeah, look, it's not all peaches and cream. It's not a matter of, utilising your TV antenna on your house or just chucking an antenna up willy-nilly. You have to really look at your landscape and say things like the amount of trees and rock and electromagnetic setting, if you like, to really help you put in some extra infrastructure which can help boost your connectivity in the farmscape. You know, here we've got some great pictures of towers, you know, in different environments. On flat landscapes, a little bit of height, that investment in a tower can really create that utopia of connectivity, that, you know, outdoor Wi-Fi or LoRaWAN system that gives you massive coverage across and reliable coverage across different areas. Strengths of signals are really important. If you're really valuing a piece of data, we need quite strong permanent signals. Otherwise you get, you know, what we call redundant or poor redundancy, lack of, you know, a lot of error, a lot of missing data coming in from your sensor systems out on farm. There's some nice photos there of devices that some of the farmers are trialing, you know, on the back of their ute, basically a mobile Wi-Fi hotspot and various boosters that, you know, automate the collection of data as they're and create office-based connectivity on their ute as they're you know, doing their day-to-day rounds on the farm. Might jump to the next slide. It's not all peaches and cream, everyone. You know, you whack up a tower, boom, you can connect everywhere. That's certainly not the case. This is a little map, some testing that's been done out on the Crossings farm at Annulong. Quite a complex landscape, a lot of hill country, hidden valleys, a lot of local topography. The purple colouring in that map is actually where we're getting really reliable, much more reliable LoRaWAN. It's got low error rate through one of these LoRaWAN networks. So you can see, because of the topography, we have to really think about where we put towers, where we put gateways. We have to actually target the bits of that farm where we know we want connectivity. So there needs to be a little bit of thought put into the design and you know, a lot of thought put into how valuable is that piece of data. The other interesting picture and thing to be aware of is the one in the bottom right corner. That's actually out on the Brolga farm, where we've got a walk-on weighing system that's connected. That's located near some trees. Now when trees get wet and heavy and there's a lot of wind, it actually really disrupts this type of low bandwidth connectivity. It can become quite unstable. So practical things affect connectivity on the farm. And I think that's me. I'm done. Just wanted to give you a little bit of background information around the types of connectivity solutions that are out there that are being trialled. Hopefully debug some of this language you're going to hear over the next couple of sessions.
Great, thanks Anthony. It's a very high level technical discussion, but hopefully positions for people those different types of connectivity. We'll definitely hear more of that next week when we actually have the pilot farms profile and get to interact with the participants directly, get some of their challenges and successes. But I think the important thing to take away is that there's different connectivity for different jobs and different sensors, which probably leads really well into our next session. Thanks, Joe. We'll have a bit of time, hopefully, at the end for questions. Running a little bit late, but not too bad. So I'd like to introduce Darren Price. Darren has a very hands-on experience with sensors, connectivity, and technology. If we could get Darren up on screen, if you want to share your video. Thanks, Darren. Darren was the manager at Karwoola at the MLA sensor trial there, which we took a lot of lessons away designing our pilots. Probably helped us define some of our key suppliers as well. They had a very different approach to their pilot, but Darren's going to give us an introduction and his views on one, the technology and some of the key benefits he found and some actual return on investment. He's done a lot of analytics in that area.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. Morning, everyone. Great to be here. So yeah, I'm a Director of Price Rural Management Proprietary Limited. I've moved into the consultancy space in the last 12 or so months after managing rural properties commercially. There we go. So my background, past 2.5 years, I've been involved with some on-the-ground involvement in rollouts of various devices, the Internet of Things space. We've put in over 700 digital devices now and helped to evaluate those over 36,000 hectares and multiple properties. And as the list says there, much like you've seen in the project today, we've mirrored a lot of those things, or vice versa, weather, soil, and so on and so on. And look, there's been some really fantastic learnings out of all of this. And I'm going to speak today a bit about ROI and business practice change. The great news is that, you know, many of these offerings now are starting to give us viable use case and ROI, which, you know, up until the last couple of years has been a little bit scratchy perhaps. Personally, I've identified ROI and practice change in water solutions, cattle handling, smart tags, weather, soil and irrigation, and also satellite pasture measurement. So in the brief time I've got today, I'm just going to speak about 2 examples. This one here is a case of, and I'm not sure, Joanne, whether the video works on this, that this is a screen video. If it will go. I don't know if you're able to help me with that one. So we put in a group of water sensors across the Karwoola project, and also in the rollout with the Romani Pastoral Company through an MLA project as well. And water seems to be one of those more mature spaces now that is starting to really provide consistent, accurate feedback on data. And this particular one on the screen was a product that was put in under the Sigfox network of communications. And very briefly, really good example of use case for us. We were checking 5 tanks, 9 troughs and 6 dams, so 20 water points. The travel distance was about 14 kilometres and taking about 1 hour. Now this was on an single property. The rollout was across multiple properties, but on this one particular property, it was 14 Ks, an hour per check. Obviously in the summer, it was 7 days a week. If we had a problematic tank or trough, you know, maybe you're doing it a couple of times a day in summer. But annually, we worked out approximately 180 days of checking. So an average cost for the business after we factored in the labour, travel, wear and tear, etc., was about $110 a run. It doesn't sound like a lot per run, but over that period of time, that's nearly $20,000 per annum. By adding in these particular sensors, in this case, we reduced the need for physical checks by 70%. So 2 runs a week were dropped out. What we need to remember, of course, is that just because we have these devices in doesn't negate the need for anybody to actually physically visit these sites. You still need to do that on occasion. But if you can roll back that need in some sort of percentage, it offers you some real good return. So huge cost saving, better utilisation of the labour unit that was no longer required on those, the 70%. And look, you know, it was great. Peace of mind in the summer. These are all comments that have been echoed by the producers that are involved in this project, able to go away and do your thing elsewhere with the knowledge that you've got some sort of early warning system. We also had a couple of sensors set up in the river. Molonglo River runs through Karwoola Station, and it provided some early warning system in terms of flooding activity. So that, again, gave us a great deal of peace of mind once the alerts were set and put up well. I don't hesitate anymore in terms of water sensing. I think it's a bit of a no-brainer. Sometimes it can be a really good place to start. Plenty of communication options. So really quite a good space to be in. So the other one, the next one is animal tracking and monitoring. So we rolled out a few tags across mobs. Tracking of animals, allows you to look at mobs or individuals. This particular one is a product that was run out on a LoRaWAN network, and much like the stuff within the host farms in this project, able to ascertain current position of animals, body temperature, distance that animals have moved. Very easy to get a quick snapshot of mob positions and activities. Some really good health check stuff on the individual tags, what battery strength is still available, and so on and so forth. The way that I used this and supplied an ROI was around tracking bull movements at joining time. And as we know, we can all go to the paddock and look at the bulls. And again, as I said, with the water, that's still important to do some physical checks. But, you might look at a bull, he'll stand up under a tree, he'll walk around, he'll have a stretch, he may even go and do some activity. And for all intents and purposes, you identify him as being sound and operating. We know also in reality that sometimes they go and sit down as soon as we leave the paddock and they're not working. By adding some smart tags to this, we can monitor, the activity of the bulls, when they're working or not. Some bulls I saw were walking 30 kilometres a day. Others were walking 4 or 5. Obviously, that animal or those animals that walked the short distance were either very lucky or they were injured or had a subclinical issue. We swapped those out, and my theory was that if I could even just increase 5% of my calving percentage by early identification of a bull that's not well, it could be far greater than that, of course, if a bull was in for a whole joining period and not identified as working. We've probably all had some sort of disaster around this with rams or bulls. But if a 5% increase over 100 cows equated to 5 calves at an average of $1,000 a calf out the gate, which is probably conservative, that presents a really good ROI for the use of these sort of products. It can't be understated also that, having an idea of where animals are grazing and how they're grazing the paddock can lead you to some really good knowledge around your pasture intake and requirements as well. So that's the other add-on here as well. But specifically with the bulls, we've identified that and used that as a form of return on investment.
A couple of questions in here just to interrupt. We've got one around the cost of setting up the water monitoring across the 20 watering points, and a second one was the Romani cattle tags tracking low orbit satellite or LoRaWAN Wi-Fi, please.
Sure. So obviously it depends on what product in terms of water monitoring you are choosing to purchase. If you're using a LoRaWAN or a Sigfox type network, you'll require some form of towers, as we saw in one of the previous slides there. So there's a cost to that. Towers are becoming cheaper, but there's a guarding cost also. If you're using a satellite option, for example, again, the sensor might cost you a little bit more, and perhaps your data costs are a little higher. Sensors can range from $150 to $700 to $1,500, again, depending on the type that you choose to use. And I'll talk a little bit quickly about the comms options and how you might make that choice. But it's really difficult to nail down a specific cost because of the variety of monitors and comms. And then, so with the Romani cattle tags, yeah, so they were a LoRaWAN system of cattle tags. So reporting back to a tower and then up to a satellite. So my final slide is the connectivity types. So just wanting to echo, you know, the thoughts there of what we've seen in the previous slides with the previous presenters. There is always a solution to suit everyone. The description or the language around the different types of connectivities is confusing. It takes a little bit to get your head around, but I guess it comes down to your decision is based around your needs, what sort of devices you're putting in, your topography, the distance that you need it to report across, the number of times you need that device to report. Seek some sound advice, talk to suppliers and do some homework to make your choices. But they'll have all different cost structures and types of installation requirements. So it's something that you need to really have a close think about and seek some advice. And that just about wraps me up, I think, Scott.
Great, thanks, Darren. That's great. I mean, Darren's got some great experience through his consulting and also through his work with the MLA projects around the farm management aspects of it, plus the application of the technology. So I really appreciated that he could share that with us today. He'll be back on webinar 3 when we start talking around some of the technology and supplies as well. So in webinar 3 will be an opportunity to hear from the suppliers involved in the project and do some Q&A with them as well. So that's great. Thanks, Darren. We've got about 8 minutes to go. So yeah, we're just going to spend a bit of time with Tim Gentle from Think Digital. So Tim's been working on some technology to showcase our technology. Originally, we were looking at having a farm walk app where basically with augmented reality, you could walk around the farm and hold up your phone and look at different pinpoints and see what sensors are out there. When you go onto a lot of these pilot farms, and as I said before, we've got over 150 sensors across 3 farms. Other than maybe a tower, you don't see a lot of things, solar panel here or there. So looking at how we can share that with you. So we've actually developed off the back of the augmented reality app some web resources, which I'll be sending out some links and log-on details later today or early tomorrow. We're just doing some final tweaks to those. But I'd like to hand over to Tim, if we can get Tim up on video. Thanks, Joe. And he's just going to give a bit of an overview of some of the tools we've developed. So hopefully give you an idea of the breadth and scale of some of the work we've done on these pilot properties.
Okay, well, thanks very much, Scott. Just waiting on being made host so I can screen share, but nothing's coming through.
No, we've got you up on screen already. Can you see that? Joe's got the prezos there.
Yeah, I don't need the prezzo. I just need to be able to be made host so I can screen share, please.
Good demo.
Thank you. Just waiting on it now. Okay. Wing this.
I've just made you host. Have you got that request?
No.
Okay, bear with me.
I'm on.
You good? Great.
Okay, that'll do. Okay, guys, thanks for your time. Look, really exciting that I've been able to work with Scott and all the tech on property to be able to, show you what's being out there. So ideally, as Scott said, we were meant to be popping out on the farm, holding up our iPad or holding up our phone, and bang, bang, bang. We were meant to be seeing some augmented reality, which is really exciting. That will happen later in the year. So until then, we've got some e-resources that you'll be able to get involved in. So the 360 virtual tour. think of it like Google Street View. It's pretty basic. I'll give you an overview, but the link is down in the bottom right-hand corner there. Scott will share this out after the webinar, but if you want to jot that down or visit it now, it's ready to rock and roll. So I'll visit it and we'll just have a quick little tour. So what we did is Scott was able to, which I found interesting, he was able to take the photos himself. So well done, Scott. We sent him out a 360 camera. He set it up in the paddocks and he went around to all the different farms and took the photos for us. It's amazing what happens in COVID times. We've become photographers now, Scott. Anyway, the 360-degree photo you can see here, I'm just using my mouse to scroll around and look up and look down. You'll see these interactive little hotspots. And when you click on these, for example, this FarmBot tank sensor, up it comes. And you'll be able to read a little bit about who the provider is, the type of sensor it is, and then a little bit of a description. Scott also took these photos as well. You've been busy on the case, mate. Well done. Now, we have got a link to the different suppliers. So if you wanted to visit FarmBot, you just give that logo a click there and bingo, you'll be able to go visit those websites. Now, excitingly, we had a bit of a play with some live data. Now, we've only just got this data. So, you know, bear with us over the next week or so, we'll improve the outcome. But overnight, we had a bit of a play with this one, Scott. So when we click on the weather station, okay, you'll see down here in the green, click here to view live data. Now, we're pulling this from Pear Tree, fantastic partner to work with, but you need a log on to be able to view this data. So it's not public yet, and we'll work with Scott and Pear Tree to make that public, but I'm already logged in, so let's check it out. So we can now then go in to have a look at this, data coming from the weather station. We can see wind direction and air temperature. So extremely important for people who can't get on farm to check out this technology. This will be available for you to go in and view it. Now, some of the devices and sensors won't be made public, so you won't be able to see the data for those, but we're certainly going down the track to be providing you some external access using the virtual tour. In the virtual tour itself, over here on the left, you can click quick navigation and you can jump from farm to farm. So if we needed to, we could go to mile and we can close that and then we can see on here. Very creative, Scott, putting it up the top there of that header. But again, you can click on these little thumbnails and learn more. All right, I'll move along. We've got the virtual tour. So it's a bit like Google Street View. But the real game changer was the augmented reality experience. This is known as the companion app or the companion application. Now, sadly, we're not on farm. We don't get to check this out. But I've got a short video to show you. It goes for about a minute or so. So kick back and relax. This is us just testing out the application. This is a couple of months old, but you'll get the drift. Now, just pause that. This is based on latitude and longitude. So if you know Pokemon Go, I don't know if you or your kids would have chased them down around the town and on your property, but this here has been pinned on latitude and longitude. So as you're moving through the property, whether you're driving, whether you're walking, you'll be able to see these pins pop up. And we've also got a 2D map up here as well. So traditionally, that's what we're used to. But augmented reality places digital pins into our real world. And the ultimate aim here is to have a wearable, so having glasses. So that video there will just take us through. I keep walking here in this demonstration. You'll see the pin follows me a little bit, but then I can check in here. I won't play the full video. We're short for time, but you get the general drift. Now, the ultimate aim for us is this. I don't know if you guys have seen wearables, but they're called augmented reality wearables. This is one from about a year ago, but Facebook, Google, Apple are all bringing out glasses, a bit like what I'm wearing at the moment. and you'll be able to see the digital world in front of you very soon. So we're preparing the application for wearables, not just the mobile phone. Finally, we have one more resource available for you. Check out the link down in the bottom right-hand corner. This is our latest product. We have Farm VR, we have Farm AR, and thanks to Scott and the team out there, we've now got Farm XR. So you can go to this particular link here, app.farmxr.com. I'll do that now for the presentation, and that's how I'll finish off. So I'm going to the application. Here it is right here. Now I have signed in. So when you first land on app.farmxr.com, you'll need to join up. But once you join up, we have got 5 public farms, and you can see them here. So you can choose which one you want to look at. For the purpose of today, I'll choose Angalong. And you can see here all the sensors. Now you'll be able to click on a sensor. It comes up on the right-hand side, and you can see here, we're pulling in some live data for you. So it's really interesting, you know, clicking around to see the different sensors on property. You can see how full the tank is. You can see what the weather's saying. And we're just basically pulling in the most recent live data from Pear Tree. So well done to Pear Tree again for providing this data for the general public to check it out. You're welcome to click around. It works really well on a desktop, this one. This is a web application, whereas the companion app is designed for a mobile device. So that pretty much is it. I'd love you to have a bit of a try of the applications. There's my details up on the screen. More than happy to have a chat to some of the providers about using this technology if you get stuck. But then again, all the e-resources are ready for you, Scott. So thank you very much.
Awesome, Tim. Thanks. I think you guys must have had a late night because there's some new stuff in there I didn't see last night. So,
I had to go to bed, mate.
Maybe, if we could just bring the presentation back up. There's a couple more slides. We're finishing up. We're about 5 minutes late, but if everyone could hold on for a minute, that'd be great. I'll be sending those links out to everyone after the event, so don't panic about having to write them down. I'm just going to wrap up. I'd really like to thank all our presenters today for spending their time. I know it was a little bit rushed for everybody, but there's a lot we want to cover. We really want to just create the background for the next 2 events as well. So next week, I'll be really keen if you've all got time to turn up. We'll be actually running some really extensive videos of the 3 pilot farms and the properties, looking at sensors, interviewing the growers. We spent a lot of time out on farm doing all this pre-work because we knew that we couldn't actually get everyone out there in person. So, yep, next week we'll have Brian and James and Rob, which is great. Appreciate their time. They'll be hopefully online if they're not harvesting or planting for at least a few minutes to do a Q&A so you can ask them questions directly. Great, even if you want to send me any questions by email for next week's event, that'd be great. There was a few questions in the chat there coming up, so happy to address those after. We will have all the suppliers online for the 3rd webinar. All of the technology which we put on these farms was commercially available and is commercially available now. That was part of our remit for the project, and also really keen that it was all purchased under commercial arrangements with normal setup. So if you're interested towards the end to inquire, you can inquire directly with those providers as well. Just want to flick to the next slide. Obviously, as well as our suppliers there, so that's a list of the suppliers we had on all those properties. There's also several partners down the bottom there. I'd like to thank Local Land Services, New South Wales Farmers for helping us get out into the farming community. Think Digital for the digital resources, which look really great, and Cooper Films who did the video work. Brendan did a fantastic job with that, and we've got more videos to come. There should be some videos in the 360 tour as well, which you can click on and link to. So Thanks, everyone. I appreciate your time.